trust me, you know, this area 1 may seem like it'll take forever, but the total duration of this Let's Play is about 2.5 hours. It's not a long game. And, you know, that's because there's about 10 areas in the game, right? The first 3, sorry, take quite a while each. Like, they each take about 20 to 30 minutes. But then starting with 4, and then through the rest of them, like 4, I think it's 4. I think 4 and 5 are pretty damn short. And then 6 has a bit of length to it, not as long as 1, 2, or 3 though. And then 7, 8, 9, 10 are gone instant. They're super, super quick. Which I really like every single time I play this game, because it feels like, wow, I'm really progressing through this fast. Which I think is kind of neat, because, you know, normally the first areas of any game will be shorter in length, and then the last areas will be longer. Which I know is like, it's just sort of a standard progression thing, but I think it's kind of neat the way this game does it, where the first areas are the longer areas, and the second areas are the shorter ones, because it makes you feel like you're progressing through the game a lot faster. Which, I mean, I'm sure wasn't really the intention. You know, I'm sure it was just space and limitations and all sorts of time shortages and whatever. But, you know, whether or not it's intentional doesn't matter, because it's neat. I think it's neat. And that's because Metroid 2, it's still a good game, you know, I still enjoy it, but it's you know, there's just a bajillion other games that are infinitely more enjoyable. I'd still replay this over something like Other M, even though I like Other M in terms of gameplay. Story-wise, yeah. That's a stupid question, but, you know, in terms of gameplay, I think it's alright. It's certainly not any of the Prime games, but, or Super, or Fusion, or Zero Mission for that matter, but, you know. See, I don't mind, well, I do mind, but, you know, there's some part of me that doesn't mind Metroid Prime 4 taking so long, ever since announcement, because you know what it does? It still gives Metroid hope, because we've had, you know, before that we had 6, 7 years of just no hope, of no games on the horizon or anything like that. And then, what's the name? Then we get Prime 4 and Samus Returns on the same day, announcement-wise, which is insane. And then Samus Return comes out, and it's cool and everything, but then, you know, what's the name? I did cut this part, yeah, okay, I was going to say. But then Metroid Prime 4 also gets announced, and that's awesome. And I mean, it isn't here yet, obviously, but just knowing that it is coming, you know, and even though it's been taken a while, that it is still coming is enough, you know. Gives me a lot of hope, because it's certainly better than no hope after 7 years of nothing. Nothing to look forward to. Because now we have something to look forward to, and that's always a plus. So that's the way I feel about the Shin Megami Tensei franchise right now. Is, yeah, it seems like it's just Persona 5 until the cows come home, but, you know, SMP 5 is on the horizon, and that's better than nothing. You know, it still gives us hope. I hope it does well. Seriously. For the sake of my sanity, I hope it does well. Also, here's a strange little quirk here. Whenever you jump off a Metroid shell, your jump gets gimped a bit, and I've got no idea why. There's no real explanation for it. I don't know if, like, the shell's supposed to be slimy and hard to get out of or something, I don't know. But, also, I always thought, the spin jump animation for Samus here looks strange, or just the sprite for it, because, you know, obviously Game Boy limitations, but it just looks like she's all mangled up and a mess, which is funny. It's quite hilarious, can't you tell from my tone? Oh, well, hi there, buddy. Okay. Oh, he knocked me back off screen, which means I gotta restart the fight. Yeah, that can happen. Early on, like, the Alpha Metroids only take 5 missiles to take down, right? They're not too much of a threat. You just gotta keep avoiding them and get some shots in, and eventually they'll go down after a few seconds. So they're not too bad. Just as long as you take care of yourself and make sure to heal up when you need to. You know, when we start getting to the later Metroid forms, because, yeah, there's more than alphas, don't worry. That's when things start to get a little hairy. Like, with the next form, they are super aggressive. Even more aggressive than alphas, and, you know, they do hurt quite a bit more, so you want as many energy tanks as you can get in this game, and if you have 5 by the end, you'll be fine. This game is certainly easier than the first game, absolutely. It's not a cakewalk, but it's manageable. The real challenge is just getting around, or just exploration really, because it's just hard to figure out where you're supposed to go, thanks to the Game Boy. I'm trying to bomb this little animal, but I can't. I'm excited for Fusion now, because it's been a good 4 years since I last played Fusion, so good to play it again. And Fusion's just fun. Fusion's just a lot of fun. Not this game, it's just... like, I feel like I'm constantly saying throughout this, and we're not even that far into it, is that yes, I think this game is good. You know, constantly just trying to clarify that yes, I think this game is fun. It's so bogged down by the Game Boy limitations, you know. So I guess this little area here is sort of a shortcut pathway if you don't want to go through the little tunnel area, which, I mean, that's always appreciated. Also, those enemies can be a little strange, thanks to the Game Boy, and, you know, because they're so thin, their sprites are not very pronounced, so it can be a little hard to see at times. But now we're heading out of Area 1, we're about to go back into the corridor, since we got the earthquake a bit ago, and move on to Area 2. I think it's Area 2 that I start introducing the next type of Metroids. I think so, at least. Well, now I'm thinking about Metroid. Uh-oh. Considering he's my favourite franchise of all time, you know, now I'm thinking, oh, wouldn't it be fun to play Prime 2? Oh, what about, you know, something like... Let's get a little quirky, let's Prime Hunters, which I think is good, but... I'd probably replay this game over Prime Hunters. Because Prime Hunters is just... It's about the same level of enjoyment as this game, but longer. And it just sort of drags on a bit. You know, one of the best parts about this game is that it's short. You know, one play session will get you through it. Ooh, what if I did Other M and tried to re-experience the game and see what I think about it now, 7 or 8 years later? I think that's when I last... I'm not sure. I can't remember. So that's the lava there. Obviously we need to clear out Area 2 before we can go down it further into Area 3. But you know, thinking about it now, the this game's attempt at atmosphere is still admirable for a 8-bit game. You know, just something about it, because it's supposed to be sort of eerie. You are in the middle of a planet with these caves with just all sorts of enemies. And jumping ahead a little bit here, the further down you go into the caves, because you're getting closer to the planet's core, or at least you're just getting further down from the surface, you start you start seeing less enemies. There's just less enemies about, until eventually in the last areas there's just no enemies, except for the Metroids, which I think is really cool. You know, and it's a shame that the remake didn't really keep that in, because the last area that you go through is just big hurrah. You start killing tons of enemies and all that, which is cool in its own way, but you know, it's doesn't have the same atmosphere as this game. But thinking about it now, which one do I prefer? AM2R or Samus Returns? Probably Samus Returns, if only because AM2R can be a bit... It can show that it's a fan game sometimes. There'll be a few decisions in it which just seem strange. What's funny about both of them to me is that they're both harder than the original. They're both veteran sort of experiences. And I mean, that's really... I guess that's because both are sort of targeted to fans who, you know, haven't seen a game in the series in a long time. AM2R because it just had been a drought at that point, and Samus Returns because the same reason, except, you know, fans will be excited to get back into Metroid and all that. And I know there was a big stink about having to have the Metroid amiibo in order to unlock fusion mode for Samus Returns. Which, I mean, yeah, that's fair. I guess, because that isn't really too much of a problem now. If you want a Metroid amiibo, I got no idea how much they cost, but you know, if you can't find one around, just look online. You'll probably be able to find one at a half-decent price. Or maybe not. Maybe they're already ridiculously expensive. Which is what I was about to say. The future of it would be like, you know, if you want to play this exclusive mode, then you'd have to pay a lot of money for a fusion amiibo. So yeah, that's the trouble. So I don't know. It's sort of, it's at this point in time, it's not a huge problem, but it will be, obviously. So until then, well, there was the same sort of stink about Twilight Princess HD's Wolf Link amiibo, because that unlocked the Cave of Ordeals, I think it was. I'm not sure. I played the Wii version, so I remember people being upset about that. That's just because amiibos are in this very uncomfortable area where, you know, they're really cool and you want to have them. But the thing is, you can't have nothing locked behind them, because then they'll just feel like an invalid thing to have, and there's just no point in having it. But at the same time, you also don't want to have too much behind it, because some people don't have it and they won't ever be able to get it, so they just have no access to it. Here we go. This is the next form of Metroid. This is a Gamma Metroid. Now, Gamma Metroids essentially act the same as Alphas, except they hit a bit harder, and their hitboxes are bigger than you think. And that little laser thing that they have that comes out every few seconds, it can hurt you, I think, but its main purpose is to block any missiles that go its way. So you have to time your attacks as to not get blocked by the laser. Although you can still hit them anywhere. You don't have to worry about any sort of spot that you have to aim for. So don't worry too much about that. Actually, if there's one thing that's interesting when we one day get a Metroid 5, which at first glance I thought Samus Returns was going to be, I thought it was Metroid 5, and I got so excited, but then I found out it was just a remake, but, you know, still, beggars can't be choosers, right? When we hopefully one day get a Metroid 5, I wonder, it'll probably be styled after Super, which was styled after 1, right? Because it seems like all the odd numbered entries are styled after 1. I'm just talking about Super and the original, which are non-linear, and you know, they have this sort of open sort of feel, and you know, you just look around for bosses, then you take them down, and then you go back to the one of the central areas, and then you head to the final area, something like that. Or, and because I've noticed that with the odd numbered entries, I've also noticed with the even numbered entries is that Fusion seems to be styled after Metroid 2, this game, in that it's linear, sort of, and that it focuses more on... What does it focus more on? Well, I'll tell you what it doesn't focus on. It doesn't focus on, you know, exploration, well, too much exploration and non-linear sort of interconnected stuff, which I think is interesting. And plus, I mean, you go back to SR388 for the beginning anyway, and you're sort of in that area and all that. So I don't know, and well, I guess for Metroid 5 they can't go back to Zebus, considering what happened to the end of that. At the end of Super, so... and I guess for Metroid 6... God, imagine that. Imagine there being a Metroid 6. You can't style that off to... Well, you can't do anything with SR388, considering that's also gone. So... oops. But I'm guessing for 5, they'll probably just play things a little safe. Also, what's pretty cool about this game is that just because we saw a Gamma Metroid doesn't mean that every single Metroid after this is Gamma. They slowly start to introduce Gammas, as in, you know, I think for Area 2 here there's maybe 3 Alphas and 2 Gammas. And then for Area 3 there's maybe 4 Gammas and 1 Alpha. And, you know, they sort of do that all throughout. And I think there's one point later in the game where, you know, you're fighting the 3rd form of Metroid all the time, and then suddenly there's just an Alpha in there, in one of the later areas, which is kind of cool. I like that. It still simulates evolution, despite the fact there's only 40 on the ever alive, really. So, it's a neat little detail. But over here we have another Alpha. You see what I mean? Just as I was saying earlier. So, you know, this is what you'd think would be a Charizard statue, but now we got an Alpha Metroid here. See, environmental storytelling started with this one. I guess. I can't think of anything in Metroid 1 that would do that. Unless you want to count something like the statues in Turian or something, I don't know. Anyway, every single time you see a room that's structured like that, always bomb that lower section so that way you can, hopefully, you know, assuming that there is, another section down here. You know, you might find extra stuff, or, in this case, the path to progression. So, yeah. Always be on the lookout. Now, in Metroid 1, there was a room just like this, and it was garbage. I think it was when you were coming out of Ridley to go back up to Norfair. There was an area like this, and it was terrible. Because you had to shoot the platforms above, jump, and hopefully time it right, so that way you land on top of them, not in them, so you got flung out, just fall to the bottom, have to do it again. Like me just there, because I realised we have to go this way. You know, in this game you got the spider balls, so hell with all that. Thank God. So what I keep trying to do here is I keep trying to time my jump there with the block rematerializing, so that way it'll hit me upwards, and hopefully onto the platform there. But nope. Either you can't do it or I can't get the timing right. So yeah, there you go. But now that we have the spider ball, we can get it anyway. Actually, it's kind of strange. The spider ball doesn't come back in a 2D game after this. Well, that is... okay, well, it kind of makes sense because of the power-up that we're about to get later on in this game. That kind of makes the spider ball invalid. And they always just bring that power-up back instead. But, I mean, it comes back in Prime 1. No, it's in Prime 2 as well. Yeah, it's in Prime 2 because of the Spider Guardian. Which is fun. Especially on the GameCube version. And I don't think it comes back in Prime 3. A lot of things don't come back in Prime 3. Prime 3 is sort of the enigma.